Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
And this is our part of the series for people giving the younger generations advice. And now we're into the 40s.
Yeah, in other words, you're 40, and so you're coming into a kind of a very mature area in many ways, between 40 and 50. You're hoping that you will have achieved something like what you were aiming for if you're wanting to be successful. And so it sometimes mightn't turn out like that for one reason or another. But at the time also, as regards work, that's one thing. You're hoping that that you're going to acquire. You're improving in knowledge and experience in dealing with people. You've already got a fair idea in your mind of what it is that you want to achieve. Now, factors can interfere with that. For example, if you have a bad marriage in your 40s or 50s and you're married and you have a bad marriage, that will very much interfere with your plans.
So a lot of people at this stage are now 10 years into the marriage. They've bought the house and they've probably had their first child or second.
Right, and they're correct. And but then problems can develop, and if when they were starting out that things weren't just gone into in some ways, and that there was a fair good bit of a chance that when times would get a bit difficult, that there would be a unity of purpose there and allowing for the good and the bad, which happens no matter who you're with. But if there's an imbalance in that area, then your plans that you might have had often come unstuck. And so this is something that men and women have to cope with in their 40s or 50s. Generally speaking, in the court system or anything of that calibre, a man is a provider. It's in his DNA. And if there's any difficulties, for example, in that, which in the 40s and 50s it's going to happen if you got married in your 30s, or even in just coming up to your 30s, it's going to be pretty severe at that stage. And it can often result in marriages breaking up, and they do. Breaking up a lot more now than maybe some years ago, but they do happen with the best will in the world. And so therefore you're the provider, you've often going to lose out in that area. You're going to first of all lose the family home, and you're going to perhaps have to seek alternative accommodation. Your life is going to change completely from what you expected. So these things happen, and likewise for a woman it can happen that she can have a difficulty as well with maybe an intractable man, and so on and so forth. So there's different issues, but they all boil down to the same thing. In the 40s and 50s, oftentimes it can be a bleak time, aside from all your relatives passing on and meeting and making you have to cope with that. You might also have to cope with a difficult marriage.
That's the thing, because a lot of people, their partner now in their 40s, right? There's a few things that are going to happen in the 40s. We mentioned already that in your 30s you should be preparing for the loss of some loved ones, whether they're your friends, your aunts, your uncles, the whole lot, right?
Correct.
So you're already dealing with that.
Well, you see, you could be dealing with that, and then if you have then problems in that area, so that then brings stress, and it brings serious stress.
Yes.
And so you've often got to sort of have to try and think or try and anticipate and seek some bit of advice. But advice is not much use to you, because if I've got a toothache, you're not going to feel it.
Yes, that's a very good point.
You know, or anything like that, or an illness, you're not going to feel it. So So people don't. So there's not much point in going. And experts are not. Experts are just as fallible as the rest of us. It's just their opinion. They're not in it, and they can have all sorts of what do you call it? Fly in the sky or something. It's just not going to work in reality for what the situation you find yourself, because each situation is different. So therefore then that can happen. So whatever plans you had, man or a woman, they don't then develop. So you often have to make serious readjustments at that age. Aside from your loved ones dying and gone and you're mourning them, but you also have the other. So you can have a lot of difficulties between your 40s and 50s. But you've already developed in some ways of coping. So you have that underlying whatever it is that actually keeps you afloat.
It is, but I compare the 40s to the 20s going to college for the first time. And there's a reason for it. So when you go into your 40s, your life is changing. There's a realisation when people hit 40 that they're getting old.
Correct.
Okay, then they start thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I'm 40. I'm getting old. Particularly if they're single, it's more frightening. Now, if they're married, it's not too bad. But at the same time, there is the realisation that they're getting old. So, for the single person that starts losing, that hasn't made preparations to lose their loved ones, because this is what's going to happen in the 40s, this can be difficult. And it's at this point, some people that I know in life have turned to alcohol and drugs. Like they did in their 20s. So again, I suppose really what it's about is it's about getting support, putting the support and being prepared for all these things as they happen.
Correct, yeah. But realising that nothing like by way of artificial stimulants of that nature is going to do anything for it.
Yes.
It'll do the dead opposite.
Yeah.
It'll make it worse because a drink is a depressant.
It is, absolutely.
It's not. It gives a temporary lift like everything else that's false, and then it's a downward slope.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this sort of respect for yourself, irrespective of what calamities come your way. When you're single, you can have sort of regrets. Why did I do this? Why didn't I do that? But there's no point in that. That's a cod. First of all, I'm here. Unique, nobody else.
That's it.
That into the head. It doesn't be often referred. It doesn't be often spoken about enough. Irrespective of what situation you find yourself in, whether you're single between 40s and 50s and losing loved ones, or whether maybe perhaps there was a very nice lady you were fond of, but it wasn't actually reciprocated, and she married some other lad, and then that didn't work out as well, and she might have her own regrets too. So there's.
Well, see, you've moved into a little zone there that's quite. It's happening already. What's happening now is, right, some people in their 40s, okay, they're at this point, they're at 10 or 20 years, they're with their partner, they're married, they have their children, they have their house, they're in debt, and things are going reasonably okay, but then they're thinking back to old flames, and they're looking them up on Facebook and Instagram, and then if suddenly you have the marriage gets a little bit rocky and a bit touchy, because the woman, especially if she's a beautiful woman, she's generally high maintenance, okay?
Correct.
And when a woman starts losing her looks in her 40s, this is one thing women aren't prepared for. She can start looking astray and going astray, okay? And the same, of course, for men as well. So they start looking up old flames that weren't reciprocated, and they're looking for a chance. And there's a danger, okay? The temptation as well.
Well, that's a real danger then in that sort of a situation, because they've been judging themselves in that way, forgetting that your mind and your spirit never ages. Your soul never ages,
yes,
irrespective of your body ages. And because you're for a finite time on this earth, your permanent home is in eternity. But in the meantime, you're going through here. So I think it's well to have a very sober view of this sort of thing that you just pointed out. But it's all very well, but as I say, a person between the 40s and 50s, and for a variety of reasons, can suffer from a certain amount of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
For either marriage going astray, and not that they're looking for anybody in the past or this, that, the other, or depending on what type of mind that the one has or the other, because we never know what's in a person's mind in the full sense of the word. We know it's in our own mind, but we know we have to be careful as to how we develop that and nourish it with proper reading and that, and avoid anything to do with pornography of any kind under any circumstances. So that's number one, and that appears to be a problem in some marriages nowadays, I believe. But we're talking about the
40s.
40s, the 50s.
Not the 50s yet, but we're still on the 40s.
The 40s, yes. Well, it's a dangerous time in many ways, and so it's a time to just batten down the hatches and just keep steady, and don't listen to too many experts saying that you're too old for this or you're too old for that or this, that, or the other. You've gained experience invaluable. So you have to weather whatever storm happens to come at that particular age, because sometimes that's when they do come.
And again, we have to mention health and exercise.
No, that's number one. And the health and exercise means a good brisk walk. It doesn't mean running like a jackass for about 10 miles.
I see it in the park all the time, people.
When I see it morning, noon and night in places, and I see people cycling up mountains which, I don't know, they'll be near the grave, or I know one fella that used to do a lot of that walking and jogging and all the rest of it, and he got bad feet in his 50s.
Yeah.
So you've got to exercise common sense. I always like a good walk, always did.
Yeah.
And
I know several people, John, in their 40s, and they have bad knees from jogging all their life.
correct, but they've bad feet,
Yes.
and some of them can't walk.
Yeah.
I know one man in Bray that was on that, and I knew himself and his wife. They were a very nice couple, and geez, he couldn't walk, and that's how it happened.
Yeah. So everything in moderation, I suppose.
Well, yes, and don't overdo your joints. I see people do. I see what they're doing. I see them all the time, and really they're abusing their bodies. Your body, you weren't meant to run like a jackass several miles every bloody day and every morning and evening. That's a cord. You're going into your body. It wasn't meant for that. It was meant for to walk and go about in a certain way, and you weren't meant to be on a bicycle and go for 50 miles and think that you've achieved something. You're injuring your blinking health, full stop. It doesn't matter that you think that you're not. It's no way to be down in the handbars and going along into this. Just you use the upstairs department. I used to do a good lot of swimming, and when I played football, I got a cracked collarbone. I remember saying, "Well, damn, that's one thing I'm not going to have anything to do about." And I remember I used to be good at the hurling as well. I remember a fella lost his eye because another was skittering, fiddling around like this. They were going back a bit. So, like, you learn things and you see. So I was good at the tennis and handball, and table tennis. Sports that I wasn't going to injure myself.
Yeah.
I did very well.
So don't put yourself in harm's way.
Aye, but as I say, I'm just digress there, but in the 40s is a very dangerous, very
Volatile.
usual volatile time, and steady as you go.
Steady your ship.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, John.